A pleasant good afternoon. My name is Gideon Smith. I am the project coordinator for the Caribbean Future Forum. Today we're here to discuss the changing nature of jobs as well as the future of work in the Caribbean region. I have joining with me Dr. Camille Wardrop Alain as well as Miss Dagmar Walter. And I want to thank you very much for joining us here today and giving us some of your time to just dive into these issues that, as we all know, have been plaguing the Caribbean region for a while. So, going right into the first question. Now, the labor market continues to change rapidly across the world. Firstly, what do you identify as the main challenges facing the Caribbean labor market, and what specific one or two visionary leadership actions could transform Trinidad and Tobago in the medium term? So, Dagmar.
Yes, we have, of course, observed the changes in the labor market globally and also in the Caribbean. We have, of course, the rapid evolution of technology that affects everyone, I think, around the globe. And there are, opportunities coming with changes in technology, but also challenges. So this has an impact on, how we organize work, for example, that we have observed that in the workplace we can be much more mobile and flexible. We are not so tied anymore to one specific place to work. So this is, something that comes with mobility and flexibility, but also has a challenge of, how we relate to work and how, we socialize through work, and what does it mean in terms of organizing workers. So this is one trend that we have observed.
Yeah.
Also, of course, the growth that we have seen following the financial crisis in 2008 has been quite sluggish, not picking up really again. And this has had an impact really on also how much jobs that have been created. But it's not only about the job elasticity with growth, but really the inclusiveness of this growth, and if this growth is actually sustainable.
Yeah.
So what it means is really that you have not enough jobs created for the youth that comes into the labor market, and also with the shifts that are taking place, we need to have reskilling within the existing labor force that we have. Now, there are other trends also. I mentioned a bit the inequality trend, right?
Yeah.
So that the benefits, so to say, of technology advances, they are not, evenly deployed within the country, among the population. So some really usually tend to be left behind, and others who have the skills to actually jump on the train and work with it. So this is something that we have to be very mindful of, and we support, countries here in the Caribbean on, how do we create a more inclusive economy and society. Yeah. So another, of course, relevant trend here relates to really the climate change effects that we do start to see here in the region, and also the environmental degradation that comes with climate change, but also the effects of it, and the weather patterns that get more extreme. This actually can, of course, impact negatively, so to say, on assets and livelihoods in the immediate term. Yeah. But at the same time, it has a lot of opportunities to actually get onto a greener economy path, and also have opportunities to create green and decent jobs. So this is something we work on as well with the constituents that we have here in the region. And there are opportunities there. So you are asking about also, yes, we do need champions, we do need leaders, and I think that we just yesterday benefited from an extremely wealthy and rich, I should say, discussion on the future of work here in Trinidad and Tobago, where the Minister of Labor and Small Enterprise Development has taken a strong lead in looking into, what does it mean for Trinidad and Tobago, the future of work and these trends. We discussed them yesterday with a large set of stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And I think that is also something that we find very important and that we support, is to have a large-based discussion, of course led by workers, employers, the government, but also including different ministries, civil society, around these defining trends. And really, I see there that, ministers, for example, can have a leadership role to play. We have another example to mention Barbados when it comes to the greening of the economy. The Minister of Labor in Barbados and social protection there is really in the forefront, and the whole country there. And I would like to say that I see a lot of opportunity in this. The Caribbean has pledged for quite an ambitious target in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and that will have effects on how does this translate in the labor market, new skills, reskilling, new opportunities, renewable energy, energy efficiency. All these actually have shown, the studies have shown that the job potential there and local job creation is much higher when you rely on renewable energy sources than actually going to the fossil energy sources that are now the traditional way of generating the energy.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, and thank you so much for highlighting those steps forward that we're making. And Dr. Wardrop Ali, yes. I'll repeat the question. So it's that the labor market continues to change rapidly across the world, and what do you identify as the main challenges being faced by Caribbean labor markets, and what would be one or two visionary actions that you would advise be taken?
Okay, thank you for having me on this interview. In terms of the Caribbean labor market, it's very industrial based. Mm-hmm. And so what is revolutionizing the industrial base sectors is technology. And so the fact that the Caribbean is often left behind in issues of global consequence, how do they rethink about gaining a competitive edge in this time of globalization, really, and with technology revolutionizing these industries? How do you adapt to incorporate those technologies to increase productivity, to increase competitiveness? The other side of that is the labor force and the fact that you have to retrain your workforce to be able to use technology, but not just use technology. Being able to be competitive means that you have to be innovative and use technological advancements to gain that competitive advantage. So how would the Caribbean do that? What strategy would they put in place in order to gain that, to regain their footing in that area? In terms of one or two specific visionary leadership actions that can transform Trinidad and Tobago, I believe reinstating a cabinet position for science and technology is important. We know that countries who invest in science and technology and who see the value of science and technology are countries that are economically developed and sustainably developed. And so having a focus on that at the highest government levels is important. And it shows, having a cabinet position like that shows that you value that area and that sector. Science and technology is not just about education. It's a part of it. Education and science and technology is just a piece of it. But there are other aspects such as research and development, entrepreneurship, creating small business, fostering an environment for small businesses to thrive in scientific and technological fields, critical to the advancement of this nation and to the region, and to really jump-starting the economies in this region.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Our next question goes right to Dagmar. So Sustainable Development Goal 8, it speaks to decent work and economic growth, and more specifically, two of its targets include achieving full and productive employment and decent work for all, and a second target speaks to protecting labor rights and promoting safe, secure working environments for all workers. Now, the ILO recently launched its document, The Changing Nature of Jobs. It's a report, and it shows that there is a lack of stable, full-time jobs across the world. So in the Caribbean context, what would be the ILO's role in sort of alleviating the impact of this challenge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is right. The report that you are mentioning came out last year in 2015.
Yeah.
And well, indeed, we see this, right? That there's a full-time, as you say, stable employment contract is kind of regressing a bit, and that you have more of contract work. And of course, we also have always seen the informal economy, where sometimes you don't have any contracts at all. And this is, and of course, we have also the employers, right, that are a category for itself. And the issue here is that with these trends that we observe, right, there is a greater injection of flexibility, and that is kind of, as I said, also linking to this mobility, and that indeed, today we are not really having one job throughout our career or even staying in one enterprise throughout our career, but rather we would have about 5 to 7 different jobs is the average. This can be much more, can be less, of course. And this kind of flexibilization, if I say like that, has to go hand in hand with security.
Yeah.
So the security side is where you look at, what is this enabling environment that is created to both make the economy thrive and have business thrive, but at the same time have, the security for workers. So the whole social protection side, the different programs that we have, the unemployment insurance and so, and also the whole legislative reform agenda has to be taken very seriously and accompany this. And this is something that we do work on here in the Caribbean, a lot on the legislative reform in the area of labor law, labor relations, and in this way you can accompany the change and make sure that we don't fall between the cracks, which is unfortunate, because I think when you listen to young people also and who come out skilled, and so they may not even necessarily want to work for only one employer, and they you create your own ladder of career development. It may not be straight, it may go like in this way, and this is where also it is so important to have a strong social dialogue between the actors in the labor market, and that dialogue is really based on research, on analytics, analyzing the data that is available. And this is something that we do as the ILO work on together with the UN system and the UN family, is really here in the Caribbean. How do we support and build that evidence-based, knowledge wealth, be it through statistical surveys or other means of gathering data for monitoring and evaluation, because that is something where I find sometimes the dialogue is kind of missing this foundation, and we more speak to what we kind of see and observe, but not necessarily knowing what is going on.
Thank you so much. And so moving right along, we have a couple questions for Dr. Wardrop Allen. The first one being regarding gender gaps. So in developing countries, these gender gaps, and general gender inequalities continue to persist. And they pose a challenge to young girls entering the workforce. And you as a mother, you did mention at the forum yesterday that you have sort of underpinned that analytical capacity for your daughter. So firstly, what methods in your parenting have helped to propel your daughter forward? She's attending college a year early. So what methods can you share for other mothers to sort of propel their daughters? And what advice would you give to young women and girls who are entering the workforce and are trying to surmount these gender gap challenges?
So from a parenting perspective, and I'm very proud of my daughter and what she's achieved so far, it is the value that was passed down to me from my mother. I passed down to her, which is the value of education and the importance of education. Education is the foundation of everything you're going to do in your life and achieve. And I always say, once you have that, no one can take that from you. So that is critical for us self-actualizing and moving forward in our lives. But in her specific case, she's a student athlete, and she wanted to pursue elite gymnastics. She had been doing gymnastics all her life. And elite gymnastics called for training about 37 hours a week, which did not allow her to go to a traditional school, a brick and mortar school. So she has a voice. She's always known that she has had a voice. I gave her, that space to be able to express herself and what she wants. And she said she wanted to train full time as a gymnast. And I said, well, if you're going to do that, we are not going to compromise your education. Yep. You must still have a very robust education, like if you were going to a private school. So what I did as a mother was take one of the top high schools in where we live in Houston, Texas, and I modeled that for her homeschool curriculum, and she did an online school program. So it was very rigorous. I set the bar very high, and that's something I mentioned yesterday, setting the bar high for our children and setting a level of expectation for them. They tend to meet it, sometimes surpass it, right? And so that's what I did for her. I said, your education is the key. She had a very robust 4-year education. Along with that program, she learned self-discipline, she learned time management, she learned to organize her schedule and her time very well. And those are life skills that you need in as you advance in life. And so those are the things that are really helping her now in college, because when you go off to college, you're on your own. Your parents are not there to help you. You have to kind of survive on your own, and having those skills are critical. And so she gained those through my not compromising robust quality education for for her. And in terms of the young women entering the workforce, I believe that, and I mentioned this yesterday, we have to take personal responsibilities for our lives. Our lives can't always be mandated by government policies, right? At some point, we have to take personal responsibilities for our lives and believe in ourselves, regardless of what is going on around us. We have to believe that we can do the things that we want to do. Find our passion, find your voice, and then move forward with tenacity, determination, and focus, and the rest will fall into place. And so that's my advice to young women.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And the final question, so it's what makes you so strongly committed to keep returning to Trinidad and Tobago to support aspiration and transformation of work and the society here in your home country?
So I was born here, I grew up here, I left here when I was 17 years old. Yeah. So my whole foundation was set in Trinidad and Tobago. And what I know that gave me is an ability to have self-worth and to be self-actualized and self-affirmed, because I was able to see people in leadership positions, the government heads, all look like me. People in professional careers looked like me.
Yeah.
And that does something for your psyche, right? Psychologically. And so having that strong foundation and a sense of self allowed me to navigate the very difficult waters I have had to traverse over the course of my career. I'm in a very unique position. I am clear that very few people have achieved what I've achieved in the field that I am in, being from this region and being from this country. And that in itself, you have an obligation to give back when you have achieved. And so that is what keeps bringing me back, a commitment to making a difference in this country, in the region, throughout the world. And that's why I continue to give back. I think my life is an example for young people, not just young women, but for young people, that with hard work and determination, tenacity, and fortitude and belief in yourself, you can accomplish anything you set your mind to.
Thank you so much. I really do think we had a quite well-rounded discussion today. Thank you for sharing, Dagmar, the advice on the importance of that social dialogue at all levels. And then we had, at the individual level, taking control of your destiny, even parents, setting that bar high, because quite often we just tend to settle for what we think we can accomplish easily. So thank you again to both of you for coming today,
Thank
for
you for having
sharing
us.
your
Thank you.
expertise, and to have a good day. Thank you.